Hi there, Jill. Hello. Testing one, two, three. Can you hear me?
I'm hearing you. You know what? Give me a sec. I just got a message. Uh,
Uh-oh.
I just got a message. Hey everybody, if you're just joining us,
Don't mind Jill if
Brett
she...
is trying to log in
Okay.
to the YouTube channel, and I think he figured it out. Let's see here. Give me 1 second. Let's just make
Yeah.
some
I, d-
awkward small
I,
talk
d-
while I
I don't
figure
see
this
him.
out.
He's not on our link right now like he usually is either.
Yeah, I think he's having trouble logging in.
Okay. Well, while he figures that out, what have you been up to?
Today's been a very quiet and peaceful day here at the house. Brett ended up. So, hold on. I'm sorry. I can't. My
Pretend.
multitasking is like not awesome.
That's all right because I came prepared. Behold, the
Oh no.
mighty
Oh God.
distracting
Sorry.
magic pen trick. Voila. I
Hold
need
on.
that pen, so I gotta grab it.
Ah, you guys. The technical, the technical awesomeness
Well, you know,
never.
when you go live, right? And in
Yeah.
some cases, when you spend hours editing, there's still mistakes that are made.
It never ends.
We're real people with real lives.
Making real mistakes. I'm just trying to show my vulnerabilities. You know what? Oh, wait. Okay. Give me a second. Do do
Okay.
do 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 do. Um, but we do have a lot to talk about, so I'm pretty excited. Um, okay. I think he's in. Can anyone confirm that Brett Eichenberger is in the chat?
Well, I
No?
don't think
No?
so. I don't think so.
Okay. So yeah, so he's actually on the road. He's kind of on. He was on call for a drone job that he talked to the company like early this summer, and that was that. And then he got a phone call. We need you next week. So we ended up having to cancel our trip to Kansas City. We had some filming lined up, kind of in that midwestern center of America for Ron Moorhead's documentary, as well as for A Flash of Beauty 3. So,
Well, I saw that he had some images online of him hanging out with giant transformers.
yes.
So it looks like heavy construction, desolate country kind of stuff going on.
Yeah, Eastern Oregon, he's actually having to follow a ship up the Columbia River.
Oh, okay.
So,
Well, I just saw a post about a woman who was floating down the Columbia River in a pumpkin.
oh,
I wonder if this is there any.
you know,
This is someone you know. This is
it
an old high school
probably.
friend, Pumpkin Mary.
Oh, Pumpkin Mary, there's songs written about her. No, I don't. I'm not affiliated with the Pumpkin Lady, but I
No.
don't know. I could be. Let's see here. Well, I don't know where Brett is. I don't know what's going on. I'm just gonna. We'll just let things figure themselves out. So yeah, so we stuck around. So we'll have to reschedule all that for another time. What
Okay.
have you been up to?
Well, so I picked up my chainsaw today. Thank you for basically being my sales lady, getting rid of a couple of Yakima treasures that didn't make it out of the Yakima Bigfoot Roundup. But now they found some happy homes in and around. Well, I think one of them took a trip somewhere outside of the state, right? And the
Yeah,
other
went to
one's going to the
Minnesota.
coastline.
Went to Minnesota, the big one did. And
Yeah.
I'm delivering the small one, the Whistler. Um, that's the more tactful thing to call it.
Right, right.
So
Well, it's very, it's very auspicious having a little pursed lip. Uh, you know, I don't know. It's like a silver-headed Bigfoot with whistling lips was the idea, right?
I guess you're the artist. You tell me. Uh, no, but a friend of mine that I went to high school with down at the beach,
Hmm.
he was interested in it, and so when I go down in a couple weeks, I'll deliver it. The only one, a lot of people have shown interest in the. Oh, I should have brought it up here. The flat panel with the trees and the
Hmm.
Bigfoot carved in.
The release, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of interest, but
Well,
you know,
what are they going to do? I mean, I have been making. I'll go ahead and bring these up here.
what's that you say?
Inspired today, so I made this guy. It's kind of hard to see here, but his stain is still drying. So we got one here. He's kind of got a little smirk on him.
Just like a real Bigfoot, hard to
Just like a real
see.
one. And then
Smirking
he
into
said get
shadows.
some ones with teeth. So I got a guy here smiling. These agates are all from a local Bigfoot beach down the road. So I've been hard at work, Jill.
Good, good. Hey, do you still have that? Do you still have that? The head, the
Uh,
Biggie head. Oh, look at that. That you're talking about, like your mounted wall
I still
hanging.
do. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's still somewhere around here. One of these days, I'm going to have to flip this computer around so I can have all this Bigfoot stuff as a backdrop instead of my talk show scrim.
I see.
I
Okay.
did. I feel like you know Jerry Seinfeld should come walking out from behind here periodically or something like that.
You could even have, it would be great. It'd be like Hee Haw, and you have like Rich Germeau in the background, and every so often he just sticks his head out and
Right,
adds.
just a sock puppet comes around, looks around. Oh,
Oh, lordy, lordy, lordy. So let's see here. I'm looking at our little list. Oh, so I just want to give everyone an update. Tobe and I had the opportunity and the pleasure of participating in a special Toastmasters event that was to honor the guest of honor, Sonia Zohar. I did not know she was really active in Toastmasters, and that was a big part of her life for a while. So yeah, so we gave speeches. You were there in person. Yours was very. You're like, oh, I've never done this before, and then you
well,
delivered this
no, no,
beautiful
no.
thing.
No, 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 no. I was really nervous because these people are like really seasoned. This is what they do for an hour and a half, down to the second, and they're counting how many pauses, how many filler words. Like this is where the spoken word goes to die because these guys are just basically rehearsing it all the time, and so for me it was a little bit daunting. I didn't know these people, and it's all on behalf of Sonia and Bigfoot. And I don't know how many skeptics we had in the audience, but everybody there was so enamored. I think they. So the deal is that each time they do this, they have two surprise words that you have to put inside your presentation or your talk. And in Sonia's case, the word I believe was it ethereal?
Yeah.
Ethereal was the word, and I think that word came up because that's how all these people felt. And some of them have never met her. Like they were just on Zoom calls when they do these Toastmasters, I think once a week, something
Mm-hmm.
like that. And so some are like in South Korea, some are like over, in Europe and things like that. So there was one gal that was so, I can't remember her name, but there was a gal, I think she was a Filipino gal, and she just had the nicest things about Sonia. Had never met her, and just was kind of irritated that she didn't have the time to hang out with her in person. And I think that's how most people felt, like they're robbed over the experience. I just had a phone call the other day from good friends Kevin Carney and Sandy Nelson of Ocean Shores, probably the two most seasoned Bigfooters out on the road that I know of right now. And they don't know Sonia at all. But they reached out to me out of the blue and said, "We want to call her. Can we just call this gal? We've seen her video." And I said, "Well, let me call her and see if she can take phone calls." And so they got off the phone with her yesterday. And again, they were so irritated that they hadn't hung out with her yet. Just like, oh my God, this is what we wanted around the campfire. And we
Yeah.
could have, we can still have it. And so, they're trying to arrange something right now with Sonia. We'll see what happens with that. But anyway, so let's plug Sonia's crowdfund because there is a crowdfund for her, correct?
Yeah, yeah. So Sonia, basically it's a GoFundMe. And there were, I guess, there's so much going on. She didn't realize how many kind of expenses go with this. And and she needed help to, tie up loose ends and, take care of business.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know how else to say it. Just to take care of everything. And so she put up a GoFundMe, and I just want to thank everyone who's helped share that and who's donated and just the kind messages and whatnot. Her goal was $10,000 or is $10,000. Currently, she is over 70. She's raised over $7,500, which is really awesome. And I think she's going to hit her goal
Yeah,
probably
because it's
this
only been
weekend.
up for like a couple weeks at the most, right?
No, Tove, this has been up for like not even a week.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. Like she's gonna hit her goal.
Yeah,
Um, Marcia K. Moore hit her goal too within a month, and they both had $10,000 goals. So listen,
amazing.
both of those ladies are loved by this community. But if you can help out Sonia, even $5, if everybody just gave $5, she'd reach it. And then imagine trying to deal with the possibility of death coming and then having bills that you have to pay and think about that just drive me crazy that that's
Mm-hmm.
actually happening to her. um, and so I mean we could go on about the logistics of it, but if you want to support this crowdfund, you can go fund me on Jill Remensnyder's Facebook page, my Facebook page under Tobe Johnson, and if you just scroll down, you'll see the actual link to go to that with Sonia's story and picture.
And if you're on YouTube, just go over to the community tab because I made a
Okay.
post. It's like a couple posts ago. It starts with, "I just got off the phone with Sonia,"
Okay.
and yeah, that's just earlier this week, I think. So yeah, any help would be greatly appreciated. And you know what? She is just such a lovely, lovely person. I can't stress that enough. How much it helps her. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, what else is going on? What's on the agenda here? Your
okay. Speaking of
pastor.
Toastmasters, I mean, you guys, they have this, like Tobe was saying, it is like scheduled out to the minute and stuff, like where they're holding up like flash, like colored cards to,
Mhm.
let you know where you stand with the time, that I completely blocked out when I was giving my
You did
presentation.
great. I thought you were going over because they have these yellow, red, and green cards that they hold up to the camera, like, shut up. But you were like right on time. We had 14 minutes and we went 14:35.
I
So
thought we had
we
15,
yeah,
and
we
I
had
brought it
15.
and I brought it in just in
Yeah.
time.
Okay, that's the ticket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me look at my not as sophisticated schedule. Um, so yeah, we have some couple new interviews. It was a twofer. We we got Doug Morrison and Brock Powell, and they were at the Yakima Bigfoot conference, and they shared their stories with us. And I just want to say, Doug Morrison, he is the genius behind these awesome engraved, like light up logo lamps. Oh, what?
Sorry, my fault. Go ahead.
Okay, not sure what's going on. So yeah, this is Doug Morrison's work, and we'll circle back to that later. But yeah, and I just have to say, Tobe, what was really interesting about these interviews was usually I'm the one doing the interviews. I'm the one who's reached out to people ahead of time. I've done the research. I've talked to them, but just meeting people on the fly and
Right.
stuff. even in those situations, I'm really familiar with who the people are and everything. Brett and Mike were in the back doing all the interviews. I was up at the t-shirt table greeting people and trying to convince them to sit down with us. So it was fun for me to sit down and hear their stories fresh.
Oh yeah, yeah. It
Yeah.
looked like the perfect little spot to do that.
Yeah, so now you said you were familiar with Doug's location or the area where he had his sighting.
Yep. Let me refresh my page here with Doug. Um, so indeed, Doug had his sighting on or near the Florence, Oregon coast area, and I grew up in the little town of Springfield, Oregon, right outside of Eugene. And so Florence was always a go-to for anybody that wanted to see the beach or be around the beach at any time. And so Doug's story takes off in 2017 on a tent camping trip with his dog and his wife in an area, and I'll say it, called Clay Creek. Now, Clay Creek, I believe, is near what is called the Sayusla. I may be wrong about that, but one of the muddy creeks that pour in out of the mountains of what is known as Highway 126 to Florence and out to the Pacific. And I'm sure that we were talking about that earlier. I'm sure I remember Clay Creek being a Bigfoot hotspot mentioned early on, circa 2000 and something. But Doug's overall story just reminded me of so many places that I would go, research what I would call ambulance chasing, these post-mortem Bigfoot incidents and interaction sites. So I could go on and on about it here. Looks like are you writing me a little something?
Oh, I'm
Okay.
talking to Brett. I just
Okay.
hey before we get lost, because we don't have the chat running up. Brett was just alerting me. Renee, thank you so much for donating.
Okay.
Um, and also someone was asking about buying Doug's lamps. We're actually getting we're gonna place an order for
Hmm.
some of these Flash of Beauty lamps through Doug. So we should be getting those sometime soon. And
Yeah.
Brett may know more of that. Sorry, didn't mean to hijack the
Oh no, that's
story.
okay. I mean, I went ahead and put the chat back up on my end. I don't know if you have on
I
yours.
can't. I'll get distracted. I'll be like,
Okay, so we'll get rid of it. I was just noting the fact that John Bull or Psycho Fu, who's in the chat, lives in Florence. So, John,
oh,
maybe you could follow up on that. 2017 and Squatch Years is like 2 minutes. So, if you haven't seen this episode, do you want to start where I left off, Jill, and go into some more detail, and I'll pick up?
oh, with the camping. So I have to like, my memory is like
Well,
shot. But he talks about he and his wife go tent camping,
mm-hmm,
and what was it? They were by the river, but someone was like throwing rocks, and
mm-hmm.
he thought it was kids messing with them. So he's kind of like, "Okay, you got me, alrighty," and then he hid in the bushes, waiting to catch them doing it again, and nothing happened.
Right. Well, first his dog's hackles went up, and he didn't know why. And
Oh,
so the
true. Yeah.
dog
Yep.
The dog alerted, and that's so common with a lot of things that an animal will alert before a human. And it could be anything. It could be a chipmunk, it could be the moon. Who knows why your animal's acting like that? But he did say his hackles went up and he was inconsolable and went inside the sleeping bag and wouldn't come out. And so his wife decided, well, if he's going to bed, I'm going to bed with him. Enough of this clown show. So away she went inside the tent, and Doug stays up for a nightcap by the fire. And what ensued was this familiar sound of water and rock. And he mentions a part where he's just like, well, I thought maybe it was a fish jumping. And so I ignored it. But then the second one, when I heard this kerplunk, he describes the sound of rocks being hit in water. And
Mm-hmm.
if you haven't ever heard that before, if you're ever by a river, throw a good sized football sized rock in the water, and you'll hear this really interesting, almost like ice cube kind of sound. Like if you, I don't know, if you like rattle ice cubes in a thing of iced tea, just imagine that on a bigger scale. And that's what this sounds like. And so that is a, that's a given that something with hands is at play. Now, rocks do slide in the stream. This is one of the things that you have to debunk, right? Is that rocks will shift in the water in the current, and it'll just sound kind of, mysterious, like something's walking through the water, perhaps. But that splash sound in concert with the kerplunk sound got his ire up, correct?
Mm-hmm.
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 Okay.
But the whole idea of the fact that what I love is the fact that he kind of addressed out loud, like, okay,
Right.
okay, and so I wonder if the Bigfoot were like, oh, he's on to us, like not understanding, like there was an exchange going on, whether he knew what he was participating in or not, you know.
I wonder if they were distracting him from something that was happening somewhere else. And we'll get into this in the other story as well. But I tend to think this is all done to guide your attention towards the sound, that something else is happening in the shadows that they need to take care of or get
Mm.
to. Um, he does say that there was a flatbed trailer that suddenly pulled into the loop of the campground, and it was making a lot of racket. He, I, the only reason he mentioned that is because after this thing left, it let out a belted scream, and he described the scream as going from low to high to low. And when he describes this scream, he describes it in the terms of it being something he's never heard and never probably wants to hear again. It sounded like something that stuck inside his DNA. And all too often you hear this from witnesses. This is an unknown, uncommon, ungodly sound that I've never heard. And I bet he's probably been to that campsite a lot or been out in the woods a lot. So I thought that was fascinating. What would the trailer have to do with it alerting like that? Who knows? Um, what would a flatbed trailer be doing at a campsite? Anyway, I thought that was interesting that the fact that it would, I don't know. I think there's some interesting stuff going on with that story that we could still kind of sleuth out.
Yeah, I'd be interested in hearing from other people in that area that have had encounters at that
Well,
campground.
just a sidebar, one of the things that happened near Clay Creek was an incident with a park ranger who had stayed the night with their buddy and they were going to decommission a campsite. And this was less than 20 miles down the road. Now, I got this report from a well known DJ at K Dune Radio, KDUN Radio, I believe it is, out of Coos Bay. And the two park rangers stayed the night that night because they weren't done. One slept in the pickup, the other one slept on the ground. The man slept in the pickup, the woman slept out by the fire pit and laid in her sleeping bag. And she awoke to a Sasquatch standing over her sleeping bag. She had no tent. She just woke up to the crotch and the legs and the power of a Sasquatch standing over her sleeping bag. And she said this thing started stomping its feet like it was going to crush her.
Oh
Just
no.
earth shattering stomps. And the guy in the pickup truck thought it was an earthquake. So he crawled underneath, as close as he could underneath the dash and waited it out. And this thing just left. Um, so who knows what that means? I mean, it didn't hurt her, but it was a show of force, and maybe it was a distraction, right, for something else happening here. Like I tend to think this is what's happening a lot of times with their activity, and I would be curious to see what the likes of other witnesses and researchers think of that.
Hmm.
Dun dun dun. He talks at you.
Doodle-doo.
You want to talk about Uncle Brock?
Uncle Brock. So,
Oh, we
well,
have to mention real
oh,
quick that the next day, back to Doug real quick, they found a 2-inch green stick fracture. When I was a corpsman, that was the worst injury you could see on enlisted or officers. And a green stick fracture means a twist. and oftentimes it's an open fracture, right? Because it's such a blunt force trauma. So you can just imagine like a soccer player's shin spiking in half like a wet rag.
No.
And this is what they found on a twisted branch, a healthy green branch that was, I think he said, wrapped around twice and broken. And it just kind of, they explode when you do that to them really quickly. He said it was over a couple inches in diameter. So possible for an elk to do something like that, obviously get wrapped up in there, but you would have heard it. Oh, and
Mm-hmm.
the other thing too is that the wife didn't hear this ungodly scream. She was totally knocked out. And he never went back to that comment there, but how often do we hear about like the witness that you can't wake up, right? They
Yep.
they fell asleep through the whole incident and you had the worst night of your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Check that box.
Dun dun dun. Next, Brock, BFRO Expedition Newbie.
Yep.
I think this was 15 years ago that this happened, from what I remember him saying. So we're back in, the latter part of the 2001 time frame, 2000s, and you want to lay the groundwork, or you want me to?
You go ahead and lay the groundwork because what I remember, because you do a much better job than I do. Let's just be honest. Brock's was really interesting also, and if you've watched the video, you'll see. And again, I'm spoiler alert. I'm jumping to the end. Um, but another thing that we've heard so much about is people who have these encounters. They almost like develop or find this artistic outlet. And I mean, I, I don't know. Were you carving
I
Bigfoot
was
had a
always,
chainsaw
yeah, I
before?
was always had an artistic bend, so for me it made sense, but
Okay.
not with other witnesses. I mean, going back to abductees, not only Bigfoot witnesses, but people that have been taken. Oftentimes, they have this urge. I just think of Roy Neary again, like this urge to build or to do something with what has happened. It's like they're trying to find their way to a moment that hasn't yet occurred, like Neary style. And I think that's what's happening here. Is it's not only an obsession, but this is something profoundly deep that means something they can't explain in any other way but this artistic render.
Yeah. So he's made these beautiful masks. I forgot what kind of wood he said they were. Originally, he was working with wood, and then he got into clay
Oh,
and
you're back.
sculpting.
This is Brock, though, that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. What was Doug's artistic bend? I don't remember.
Look, he made
Oh,
this.
oh, Doug did that.
Yeah,
No.
Doug Morrison makes
Oh,
these.
he did that. I didn't know. I didn't put two and two together. Okay.
Oh, you thought I was
Sorry.
talking about the other Doug Morrison. No.
Mackenzie. Okay. Gotcha. All right. Well, geez, you've been burying the lead on that. Okay. I know that you might have mentioned it in the beginning here, but I was probably writing notes, so excuse me.
How dare you? But yeah, so Brock went out with BFRO.
Oh, yes, he did. Yeah. And he doesn't really name them by name. I assume that's probably who he went with. And
We'll
he
just
just,
make up organizations. I mean, it could have been the Shoemakers Guild of
Shh,
America. I
right.
don't know.
He was out with Daniel Day Lewis learning how to cobble. Um, so he goes out with three guys he's never met before into the woods. And I don't know, he probably went because it was a lifelong dream to go do something kind of goofy. Who knows? Maybe he took it way serious. I don't know. But I think it's exciting to do something like this. I know it was for me. Like, I'll never forget the first time I went out on an expedition with a witness. I was just like, I know this guy's kind of crazy, but I think I might be crazy too. I think this will be fun. Two crazy guys looking for a man monkey in the Three Sisters wilderness. And so he describes this moment of walking for 5 miles in the dead of night, and how nothing happened. And you can feel the fact that he was a little bit gobsmacked that nothing was going to happen, and they had another 5 miles to walk back. Well, that's it was an eventful scenario that unfolded on their way back. But this is where it takes a turn, right? And I'm glad. Now, maybe this is why he didn't say the name of the. I don't know. You certainly can say this now, as far as the BFRO is concerned, and talk about these issues. But he did describe as they were walking, looking off to his left and seeing what he called white and green flashes of light. Now, I think that was just so timely. He doesn't give the height of these things or the distance that I remember, but he's profoundly affected by the mental stain of this incident. And then, as soon as these white and green lights flash, he sees these red eyes start opening up. Now, I think he describes those as red glowing eyes, right?
I believe so. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah, unless it's red orbs. I mean, it's possible. We don't know because those exist too. But he describes them as eyes,
Yeah.
and it happens again. It happens two different times within this 20-second period. And I don't know where the other two guys or three guys are in proximity to this, but they see it as well. They see the red eyes. Now, I don't know if they see the flashes, but he's just so thankful. And I remember the first time I saw the lights, I was so thankful and slightly irritated that I had another witness with me. The reason I was slightly irritated is because of the fact that they seemed oblivious and kind of like blasé about what I would perceive as like the biggest pyrotechnic event trick ever in the middle of the woods. But yeah, seeing his excitement meant a lot to me as far as someone reliving that scenario. And then 24 hours later, back to the trail they go with a larger group, I believe, the next day. And he's explaining to probably these other BFRO seasoned Bigfooters what had happened and is a little dismayed for the fact that he didn't mark the trail. So he's
Yeah.
trying to find where this incident took place. And I don't know what it was that kind of had him figure it out, except for he hears something. And that is what stops them kind of all in the spot, is at least Brock. And so he describes hearing what he thinks are parachutes opening up in the middle of the day above him. Because I know he kind of looked up. It wasn't like a parachute opening up on the forest floor. So, what does a parachute sound like? Well, a parachute kind of sounds like, in my mind, it sounds like a ripping sound, like a fabric rip, an
Mm.
opening sound. Listen, this is when things get really interesting as far as how Bigfoot gets from point A to point B. Because the car door slam sound, the sliding door sound, the fabric ripping space and time sound, I think that's another way to kind of explain this parachute sound in my mind. But if you're not looking for that or ready for that, I think this is when their incident started happening again. And then he described hearing not only two parachute sounds, but a smaller one, like a smaller parachute opening, which, well, I don't know, just use your imagination. Like, I was hearing Graham Hancock talk about his new series, Ancient Apocalypse 2,
Mm-hmm.
which, if you haven't seen, definitely go watch it, right? And he was saying that he gets criticized for using his imagination because it's not really allowed in academia. And I think that's probably where I would get criticized a lot by this aper community, is letting my imagination run wild with me. But whatever we're dealing with right now has an imagination too. And they're constantly using that. And I think when you engage with them on that level, stuff starts to happen. And we're coloring outside the lines, Jill. Like, you have to use your imagination. Now, you don't have to, say everything is causation for what you're experiencing. But I think this is a really important part of the story, is this parachute sound.
But those weren't the only sounds.
No, they weren't.
Oh
They
no.
led to other sounds. You described those sounds.
Well, off in the distance, there is what sounded to be like a clapping, like rhythmic clapping or a keeping of a beat. which I had to hit pause on that because I was like, wow, okay. Who else has experienced that? Us, when we were up at the
Right.
Sierra camp. Also, Jeff Rohn's story
Hmm.
about being at the Owl Moon and hearing
Hmm.
the drums.
Oh, that's right. And
Yeah.
he actually, Sprock said that it started off as what he assumed was a stick on a can. And he
Mm-hmm.
remembered the syncopated rhythm. It wasn't just, it was,
Yeah.
it had a little marching band quality to it.
There was some thought into it. It wasn't just a
Hmm.
random,
Right. So I
it,
think his goal was to double back and find the source of the sound because it seemed to like not be stopping, even though he kind of let his presence know. So as he doubles back to see if maybe it's possibly someone in the group, if it's a woodchuck, whatever, woodpecker, he slides his foot in the gravel, and that is what stops the sound. Is for whatever reason that sound was just like, okay, game's over. And so he goes back to tell the other people in the group that, events are unfolding, only they're not there. Like they're supposed to be in a spot and they're not in the spot. So where did these people go? Well, they're following the same kind of sound, only it's with what he called leathery giant hands making the same rhythm. In fact, I think there was like a two beat rhythm to it. And so again, to me, this is like a whole distraction thing. The same thing you would do if you were trying to guide somebody away from something they're not supposed to do. Um,
it's like a complex game of Marco Polo in the forest,
yes, there we go.
basically.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Forgot about Marco Polo. Um, so yeah, that goes on for a while, and they never see anything, but they do describe once they cross this creek. This is where things kind of get more interesting. Is that this is another trademark of activity that there are these invisible lines in the sand, oftentimes waterways, that are no go zones. And they let you know. I know that there was a guy named Mark Blankenship up near Bellingham, Washington, that had tremendous footage of crossing a creek with his GoPro on and three other Bigfooters near Mount Baker. And you would just see the rocks come sailing through the trees and hitting their backpacks.
Ooh.
And this kind of accuracy, right, is what they're describing here. Is he describes like seeing the rocks like dink, dink, dink right in the water, this perfect pitch. I think he said there was little tiny stones thrown. So anyway, for me, that was pretty amazing. I got to make sure my computer's plugged in. I almost lost my battery there. Okay, we're good.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Anyway, so now he's the guy that decided to start carving. That was his overall goal. But 9 months later, carving basswood, by the way, I don't know if you've ever done it, Jill, but you get a carving kit from a wood shop, and then you get a piece of basswood because basswood is extremely soft.
Mm.
Not like balsa wood, like you have those little wooden planes, but
Yes.
slightly more dense. It's a whole skill set to carve like little tiny fishermen and stuff like that. I don't know how they sell those things so cheap because that takes a long time to carve. And he decides to get into clay working, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he has got like this whole skill set of like making these beautiful clay masks. I mean, they're really cool.
They
Yeah.
are, and I
So,
almost dropped one when he
uh,
showed it to me. He was pulling it up, and I was like, "Oh, let me see it." And he kind of had one of those moments. I was just like,
you break
"I
it, you
did not
buy
do
it.
that. It was in
Yeah.
your hands." But no, it was safe. But yeah, I just think that's so. You talk about like art therapy, I guess, or just like kind of finding your passion. It's just so interesting to me that these encounters just spark, like you're saying, like the whole Close Encounters, Roy Neary, and even like the other woman, with all her artwork, her paintings.
I mean, you and Brett don't have time to really express yourself like that, but you do through your films, but I just wonder if you guys weren't doing this and you had experiences, can you see yourself kind of falling in that same? Would you be profoundly affected by an incident like that, you think?
I think so. I mean, we've always been artistic people,
Hmm.
and then we just kind of shifted into this documentary world that's become our main vehicle for storytelling. But like for me, my background's as a writer, and
Right.
so I I would easily commit myself to writing about these stories and the
Hmm.
people, and yeah,
Well, maybe you have some hidden manuscripts we'll learn about someday about that very thing.
maybe,
Dun, dun,
maybe.
dun. So
More on
he's
that
building
later.
mass. This is some 15 years later, and I think the whole video is about 20 minutes. If you got some time to watch it tonight, they're really well done. Again, beautifully shot. In fact, it looks like there's a new backdrop or something going on here because it's not just shot in a hotel or park, something like that. So I was looking at the backdrop that you guys had on. That wasn't a green screen, was it?
No, no,
No.
that's our new A Flash of Beauty 3 backdrop.
I like it. That's a nice backdrop.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
very cool. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So go check those out. And I wanted to mention real quick that today I had a conversation with a Bigfooter that some of you are going to know, a guy by the name of Sam Kitchen. I think Sam is out near Era's neck of the woods
Yep.
underneath Mount Shasta. Do you know Sam?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You know what? You know how I learned about Sam and then finally met him last summer in person is when we were coming up through Northern California, like Mount Shasta or Weed, and as well we were in production uh, on A Flash of Beauty, and there was a sign up like at is either like at a diner or at like a gas station or something, and it said if you have if you have an encounter or something, I'm making a film about the paranormal stuff that goes on with Bigfoot. And we're kind of like we better get ours out fast before.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So
Well, I don't know. Did Sam finish this project?
I'm not sure.
Okay. I'll
I'm
have
not
to ask
sure. It
him.
could be an ongoing
Yeah, I
effort.
know he makes his way out here to Washington periodically. I've never met Sam, but he's probably profoundly, changed by this event that happened. I suspect he's a witness of some kind. Um, so anyway, he was talking about hanging CD-ROMs in the trees. If you see an old episode of Monster Quest, I think that there's like oh, what's his name? Miezinski, I believe, is the researcher's name that kind of started this, as far as I know. And the idea is that not only is it providing reflection, it's a thing of interest. It's very simple to do, but it's also ripe for laying fingerprints on.
Oh,
And so
interesting.
that was, I think, the idea that Sam had is bring in something interesting to grab a hold to. So this started a conversation with Sam and I about hanging mirrors. I said, well, I've never hung CD-ROMs, but we never had any luck. And I'd be curious to see what other people say in the chat. If anybody has hung CD-ROMs, if they've gotten anything as far as interaction of any kind or acknowledgement. But if they've hung mirrors in the past, because my thought is that they don't care for them. Most of the mirrors that we have laid out have either been cracked,
Mm-hmm.
broken, or laid upside down, taken off the branch. But
Yeah.
there's never really any playful interaction with them. What do you think? Why would that be, Jill?
Well, I mean, where in nature would you have something with mirror like properties? I mean, water maybe, like really calm clear water, but otherwise, I mean, I don't know, maybe they don't like looking at themselves. I can't answer because I've
Hmm.
never sat down and asked a Sasquatch. But
That's what I was wondering because the idea that we can't get them on camera very easily, and there's this similar problem, right? The idea of self reflection or self recording. What is that? That because it doesn't have anything to do with man's ego capturing the footage. They're alone in the woods with a mirror, right? Like you would
Mm-hmm.
think, like, hey, give it to the juvie here, she'll play with it, whatever. I don't think that's the case. Like the only one fingerprint was ever grabbed out of Cottage Grove when we left it there. All the rest were smashed. And maybe it was just the amount of mirrors that we left. We even at one point
It
put
was like a
mirrors.
funhouse maze.
Yes,
Whoa,
exactly
where am
right.
I?
There's something called the psychomantium technique where you take mirrors and you face them towards one another, like poltergeist houses that, haunted houses that have mirrors facing one another. That's one of the things that people will do when they clean your house is make sure that there's no mirrors facing one another because it's apparently a doorway for the spirit world. So that's something I tried. I never got any interaction, acknowledgement of it. That certainly was a hot spot where we did it.
I
But
mean,
CD-ROMs, maybe.
yeah, I mean, it's just so much speculation. I mean, we're using our imaginations to think outside the box and think
See?
about possibilities of why they wouldn't like mirrors. Um, but I think it's kind of it's a tricky area because then we start, or one could, I suppose, start projecting like, well, they would fall victim to their own egos or something like I don't know. I mean, that's a stretch, but
Well, wait, let's talk about it that. I mean, let's talk about Barb Shoop's video coming up, right? Because
mhm.
the members got a teaser or they got the full thing of Barb's episode. Remember our podcast, A Flash of Beauty, the podcast is available on all streaming platforms as far as like iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify. It drops every Friday for the general public, Thursday morning for the members, Friday morning at 7 for everybody else. So that's tomorrow morning. Barb Shoop's
Mhm.
video drops. And
Yeah,
we had a
that was a fun
profound,
interview.
it was a fun interview. Any takeaways?
You know, what I really appreciated that we hadn't really talked about before was, and I don't want to give away too much because a lot of people haven't watched it yet. But again, their interest in the storytelling, and being able to recognize themselves being spoken about
Hmm.
and whatnot, and being celebrated. So that that's a treat. Hearing Barb's theories on that. What do you think?
Well, the title of the episode is They Want to Be Heroes. And that comes from Barb's experience of Sasquatch basically wanting to be celebrated. And this kind of gets into a little bit of what you're saying as far as the ego of Sasquatch. Now,
Oh,
we always
mm,
talk about the intention and the ego of man, but I was actually really shocked and kind of like I had a light bulb moment like, oh my gosh, these things, they want to be acknowledged as the winners, the held up on high by the witnesses. I just thought that was endlessly fascinating. I'd never thought about that before. And maybe that's the secret to being a successful Bigfooter is seeing them as kind of like the overlooked, underappreciated other. And that we get into Neil Gaiman and his comic book American Gods, and the
mm,
premise of American Gods is the idea that all these ancient gods are no longer being interacted with because this culture has computers and they're distracted and they don't look like Apollo or Zeus or any of these other gods. Well, what if Bigfoot is just like, hey, I'm not down with being ignored, you know? I don't know. I thought that was so interesting.
a tragic hero.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I mean,
Yes.
I've never heard anybody, I mean, I've been at this for 20 years. I've never heard anybody say that ever. I've never heard any of the First Nations people talk about them in that respect. Like, hey, these things like to be celebrated and honored. I may honored, yes, but like revered, no. But it makes sense, right? Because on totem poles, they are in the most prominent power position for
Yeah.
the First Nations here, right? The bottom part of the
The
totem pole.
the bottom, yeah.
Yeah. Not the bear, not the eagle. It's the squatch.
That's it. Rightfully
Hmm.
so.
I'm going to go out and throw a party for him.
So I wonder, and I'm just kind of thinking out loud, so bear with me as I work through this and probably answer my own question.
Hmm.
Uh, so I wonder if, before, like, before colonists and westward expansion and fur trappers and whatnot, when there was still a lot of contact between Sasquatch and the tribes, especially like with the totem poles, the story poles. Like if they
Yes.
were aware of the role, like like that was their representation, and it was important.
Yeah. No, I think it was. And maybe it makes a little more sense of any kind of success I've had at this, of having interaction. It was always the party type atmosphere where it seemed like things were more prominent, even in the daytime. And so I think that there might be something to that.
Hmm.
Obviously, not looking for them seems to be the predominant way to have activity, unless you're in a really rich environment. But then again, I think it's all that distraction, kind of spooky stuff that's going to happen to you, the gifting stuff, and the mind blowing footprints and handprints, all that kind of stuff, the sightings. I think you have to hang back for those things to initiate themselves to it. Just a thought, folks. Just a thought.
But yeah, definitely. And Barb, she lives in kind of a magical place, anyways.
Yeah.
So she has, I mean, it isn't like she has to really go out and look for Sasquatch. She can just go out for a walk or like go stand outside her cabin,
Hmm.
and just get some fresh air. And she's right in the middle of all of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they've got Sasquatch totems down the street for her, like three giant wood carving squatches right off the main road. So she lives in a well-known Bigfoot territory underneath Mount Rainier. So yeah, it makes perfect sense. So anyway, that comes out this week, and then we'll tell
Tomorrow,
you
7
more
a.m. 7
tomorrow.
a.m. Pacific.
Yep, that's right. Also coming out next week, that would be next Wednesday, the 13th, 7 p.m. Pacific to close, is the second installment of Olympic Strange Days Live. And we're going to do this once a month, Jill. I think we're going to be after this week, it's going to be every third Wednesday of the month. And each month will be a different subject matter. So if you wouldn't mind here, let me just see if I can just click something here. I'm going to add a photo here if I can. Let's see if I can just add one real quick. And I got it right here. Let's see if it goes. Oh, look at that. Yay.
Ooh, come on.
So, Ghost, our first one is going to be about Ghost this month. A second one with a researcher by the name of Mary Bethune. She's been a researcher here in Port Gamble with the Olympic Paranormal Society. She works out of what is known as the Walker Ames House, a very haunted house on the water here in Port Gamble. And do we need to switch that view up? Is that what you're doing?
No, I'm like in the,
Okay.
as, it's like I'm in, I'm out. Sorry.
Anyway, so yeah, each month we're going to go into power spots. You know about those in December. Maybe we can get Ryan Skinner to show up for that one on Zoom. Abductions and UFOs on the 15th. Also, there's not only the MUFON director out our way here in Port Townsend, but there's also what is known as SUFON, the Seattle chapter of MUFON. And then Afterlives, what better way to celebrate Valentine's Day than talking about afterlives? And then the cry that I have tonight, or the request I have for anybody that knows about elves, pixies, fairies, little people, the mini hoonie, What I would love to talk to witnesses that have encountered these before. Now I know that Arla, that would be probably a given that you have had many encounters before. If you know anybody out this way that can actually come to Port Townsend with me rather than Zoom, because I love to have people on site, that would be awesome. And then on April 18th, werewolves. And I have a
Yay!
guest already picked out. Werewolves, another name for dogman or lichens, and, in my point of view. But if there's anybody local out in Washington that can sit out with me at a bar and talk about dogmen, I'll buy you a pint. And it's a beautiful, historic, haunted little town, Port Townsend. So check it out. You can find out more information on our Facebook page.
Very cool. Sounds fun. We'll have to make the journey up there for one of
Yeah.
these very soon. Well, once a month, we will make
Also, if
the journey.
anybody gets a chance to see this 3 hour documentary, it's a run and gun documentary, but it's called Hoodoo Tall. It's about the Bradshaw Ranch. And there's a lot of information in there that should be listened to. This guy goes by the name Hoodoo Tall. I imagine it's a code name for whatever reason. It's about the Bradshaw Ranch right outside of Sedona, Arizona. You're going to
Right.
be hearing more about Sedona, Arizona coming up on this UAP Congress meeting next week. They're going to talk about a secret base um, outside of the Bradshaw Ranch where there's supposedly a UFO hidden in the mountain, a la, S4 Bob Lazar style.
Mm.
So I would check it out. It's free on YouTube, Hoodoo Tall.
Okay. Yeah, I saw you posted that the other day, and I started to, like, I got into it, played like a couple of minutes, and then I scrubbed through looking for stuff, and I was like, I'll have to come back to it.
Yeah,
So,
you got to hear what he has to say because you'll really connect with it. And this all came from a thread by Brandon Fugel, who basically said that he saw a lake monster outside of Skinwalker Ranch, and we were told about a lake monster, a serpent,
hmm.
outside of Skinwalker and Blind Frog Ranch. And so there's footage as Brandon's going over in his helicopter. And so Ryan Skinner and I have been going back and forth about lake monsters and the possibility that dinosaurs are part of this power spot community, which they absolutely are. And we'll save that for next week. I've got some dinosaur stories that are relevant to this Bigfoot world.
Excellent. Okay, that should be interesting. I didn't mean that like in a condescending way,
That
like, oh,
sounded
that's
really,
interesting.
yeah.
I didn't mean it like that. Sorry.
Whatever. It's
Sorry.
fascinating.
Sorry. I didn't mean it.
No,
I'm
I'm
really
hard to
interested.
offend.
I want to hear about the connection. So now it just sounds really bad. Like
I
I'm like,
really
no,
want to hear
really,
about this
you're.
connection.
Um, and hey, I just want to again. I will make a post of that last wood watcher I have of Tobes. If you're in the Portland metro area,
Oh,
it would make a great holiday gift. Just saying. So I'll get that photo up of the last
well, that's
one.
sweet to do.
And also, so next week, Brett and I will be out on the East Coast doing some filming. We're going to be in the Boston area. I say Boston area just because everything is like within a
Hey,
2 to 3 hour radius
you're gonna be
of
hanging
there.
with Mark Wahlberg,
Oh yeah, well, that's why we're going. Now everyone
right?
knows. No, he has a great Sasquatch story.
He might. He's in his Calvins.
I was gonna tie it into like some sort of Kardashian joke, but I was like,
Right, right,
no, take the high road. Um, but I didn't because I just said it out loud.
right, right.
My intrusive thoughts went out again. So, but yeah, so we're going to be out there doing some filming for some upcoming projects. If you're in the Boston area or within that kind of 2 to 3 hour, radius, reach out. Let us know if you have a story you want to share. Who knows? It's always a good time with Brett and Jill. And let's see here, just a couple little things to wrap up. I do want to say on we got to figure out, Toe. Maybe listeners can help us. What are we going to do about the Thanksgiving live stream
What day is that? I don't
on a
even know.
Thursday? Uh,
Coming up?
at the end of November, the last Thursday,
Is it?
the
Okay.
27th.
Well, we can't do it on Thanksgiving. No one's going to be here. And
It'd just be me eating turkey.
yeah, so we'll just move it.
Okay.
We'll just take. I might be out of town the days previous and after that, so for me it might be an issue. So let's talk about it offline.
Okay. We'll lay low. Well, on Black Friday, I've got a bunch of sweatshirts and T-shirts I'd like to move. So maybe we can put together like a kind of like a Friday, like Bigfoot Black Friday thing
I dig
on
it.
on the live stream. I don't know.
I dig it.
And I made a note. It could be like the Jerry Lewis telethons they
Yes.
would do, where all the celebrities would come out. Like I just keep patching in people from the Bigfoot community. Like, and next we have Arla Williams, Arlette,
Yeah.
save the Squatches. Um, so yeah, we'll figure that out, but we'll make sure our audience has something to watch. Then otherwise, mark your calendars. Make a note. March 14th through the 16th in Baker City, Oregon. We're going to be doing our Bigfoot weekend. So it'll be me, Brett, Tobe, Mike, the gang, and also special guests Angelique Benham, Ashley Stinnett, a new addition to the lineup, James Shupsky of Margie's Outdoor Store in Bingen, Washington. And if Jeff Rohn isn't in Hawaii, he'll be with us. So I'm
Yeah.
not saying don't go to Hawaii, because
Yes, you are. But Jeff,
what
do
I'm
go to Hawaii because I need
suggesting
a
is
mini Hooney story.
postponing
So, right.
your trip. So hopefully we see Jeff. If not, I don't know, maybe we'll go back out in the woods with them with a camera and see
Yeah.
what's going on.
Um, that's fantastic. Okay, cool. Well, I think that wraps it up on all of our ends. I don't have anything else to slay away at here on my notes, but we'll be back. We don't have a holiday next week. Is it a 3-day weekend? Isn't it Veterans Day on Monday? A lot of people
Oh, it
might be
is.
out camping. I think the weather is supposed to be really nice. So if you haven't been camping and you want to try it for a night, I know there's people online right now that are curious about Bigfooting. Just go out and sit on your tailgate this weekend at a spot that's semi crowded and just wait till they go home and just watch the stars and see what happens. Find a nice little crazy place and just enjoy the fact that we're not lying to you, that you can have these experiences.
But bring a warm jacket and
Yes.
snacks.
And bear spray,
Yeah, yeah.
just in case.
You never know. It's the people in the
Let
woods you have to be
somebody,
worried
yeah,
about.
let somebody know where you're going and go as a group. You'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
We need to start that Bigfoot dating website, is what we need, so we can have some company for these lonely squatchers out there that are sitting on tailgates all by themselves.
Well, George Norrie kind of
What about
parodied or
foot fetish?
something.
If we called it foot fetish, is that maybe too much on the nose for other things? But I think it's catchy, right?
We
Like,
could really cross promote.
yes, right. Yes. The German
Actually,
audience would be amazing.
I have an idea. We'll talk about that
Okay,
later.
okay.
We'll see how it goes.
All right.
That's all I got.
All right. That's all I got too.
Okay.
All right. See you next week.
Thanks, Tobe.